one of the most destructive forces in the lives of children today is state-run public schools. Their children are subject to torturous abuse at the hands of other children. Let me ask you a question. If you get beat up by somebody else at school and they happen to be 11 years old, does that change the trauma that you experienced? It doesn't do it. What if a 30-year-old beat up an 11-year-old? What will we do? We put him in jail because it's a crime. But it happens all the time with these little children. Let me read something to you here you might have heard about this week. You heard about the 11-year-old boy in Georgia who jumped out of a school bus to escape bullying. This is from the New York Post by someone named Tamar Lappin. The title of the post is May 10th, 2021. Boy 11 jumped out of school bus to escape beating from bullies, Dad says. I'll read a little bit to you. An 11-year-old Georgia boy jumped out of a school bus and onto a passing pickup truck in a, quote, desperate attempt to escape his bullies, his father said. Dion Murphy told Fox 5 Atlanta that his son fled out of a bus window last Wednesday as he was being beaten by other students. One student jumped in his face. He was pushing him against the window. When he fell, the other student took his shoe, and in a desperate attempt to escape it, he jumped out the window, Murphy said. The bus was stopped at a turn lane when the middle schooler leaped out of the right rear window. He landed on a passing pickup truck before rolling onto the highway, the Georgia State Patrol said. The child, a student at Youth Middle School in Walton County, was taken to a local hospital. He suffered a concussion and a broken elbow, according to his dad. Now, what kind of trauma do you think this is going to cause this boy for the rest of his life? It wasn't the first time he'd been picked on by bullies. The family said they had alerted the school about previous incidents and that this one had pushed the boy too far. His dad said, I believe he was trying to escape the situation. At this moment, he felt his back was up against the wall. Murphy said he'd seen a video of the beatdown during a meeting with the school's principal on Friday. There's more tapes, and that's why I'm so upset, because the school neglected the Bullying Act and did not do anything about it. Let me ask you a question. Who's to blame for this? The school. Oh, the school, they should have done something. Yeah, they should do something about that. The other kids. No. The father of this boy is to blame because he put him in an environment where he could be abused, and then when the abuse started, he let it continue. Notice he said this is not the first time this happened. How many more? My wife Dana, I was telling her about this. She said in our neighborhood, Felder Creek on the other side of the interstate in Somerville. She said our neighborhood, there was someone who said that their son, a middle schooler, was punched in the face on the bus. How many more children have to get beat up before you realize that these institutions are evil? They are not in your best interest. They are not in your children's best interest. In addition to physical and verbal abuse, our kids are taught godless ideas and philosophies 5 days a week, 10 months a year. You wonder why you lose them at 12 or 13 years old. I've said it before. Here's why you lose them. Listen to me. Now you might think, well, who's this guy telling me what? You just got to listen to me because somebody needs to tell you this. You need to hear this. The Bible says, do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits. And the Bible says that he who walks with the fools will be destroyed. Here's what happens. You're taking them to church with you. Good thing. If you can get them to go. And by the way, if you say go, they need to go. Because you're in charge and not them. You teach them. You love them. You pray for them. But here's the problem. You only get them 2 or 3 hours a day. And the world gets them 8 or 10 hours. And then time when they're on their phone, and time when they're chatting with their friends and looking up YouTube. The world has got them day in and day out and day out and day out. And you cannot overcome in 3 hours a night what the world does in 10 hours a day. And then over the course of years, this child begins to think like the world, believe like the world, deny God's existence. Why? You say, why? Because that's what they were trained to do. It is the exception when you end up with a truly godly child who comes out of public education. Why? Because God said if you put them in that environment all the time, they're going to end up just like that environment. Imagine in Israel, imagine in ancient times in Israel. Imagine a faithful Jewish family. Got these little Jewish boys and girls. They're faithful to Yahweh. They go to the temple. They give tithes. They give all the alms they're supposed to give. And they get up every morning and they're happy. And they get themselves, and they make breakfast. And they pat little Johnny on whatever his name is. You know, Johnny, Jesus, whatever his name is that they would use. And they walk him down the street and they're so happy. And they stop in front of this big building and they say, here you go. And they hand them to a man or a woman. And as you pan back from the scene and you see the sign up on the building that they walk into, it says, the Temple of Baal. Now imagine what Yahweh, God, is going to think of that. And imagine what kind of children they're going to turn out to be. How long before we see the absolutely devastating consequences of this evil institution? Look around you, my friends. How many more children do you have to lose? How many more grandchildren do you have to lose before you see that you're the one sacrificing them? How many more do we have to lose before we wake up? There are options. God has provided both Christian schools and home schools as alternatives. We have homeschooled ours for 20 years. You say we can't afford it. I say you can't afford not to. Jesus said, what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world and loses his own soul? Fathers and mothers, what does it profit you? You go to the beach 2 weeks a year. You have 3 cars. You have all the gadgets. You got a nice career. But you lose your children. And millions have done it. Mom says, I can't homeschool. Yes, you can. God would never command something that He would not provide the grace to do. And I use my wife as an example. She does not have a college degree. She didn't like going to school. She didn't like classes. She does not consider herself to be an intellectual. But she trained them for 20 years at home. Why? Because she was not going to lose them to the world. And she cried at night. And she struggled all the time. And I sometimes barely had the money to buy the homeschool books because I had to pay the taxes to cover the pagan schools and still have to pay for my own education for my children. There are options. You can change, friends. You don't have to keep going the way the world is going. You don't have to lose your little ones.